So firstly, thank you everyone for coming for today's discussion. We are gathered today at the Niepołomice Castle during the current Fields of Glory historical convention, during which I have the great pleasure to present two esteemed guests with whom I will be talking today about history, about wargaming, about gaming in general. So my name is Michał Sorbet. I am the host of Wojennik TV, a Polish YouTube channel devoted to board gaming, and my today's guests are Jarosław Lis, a Polish sociologist, academic teacher, but also an avid board gamer, game designer, from whom we have, for instance, such games as Ostatnia Wojna Cesarzy, translated to English, that will be The Last War of Emperors, and obviously 1920, rok 1920, a game released in the 1990s, which will get back to the market, which will once more become available due to a new edition, which will be released soon by Phalanx Games. Please welcome and give a warm greeting to Jarosław Lis. And my second guest today is Mark Simonich. I really don't know if I should introduce Mark, because this is such a well-known board game designer, a designer who released really a lot of very interesting games, really important ones for our hobby. To cite some of them: Hannibal, Rome vs. Carthage, the Caucasus Campaign, the successors, Ardennes 44, many others. So an excellent game designer, also inducted to the Charles Roberts Awards Hall of Fame in 2002. Please give a very warm. And today we are gathered to discuss wargaming, board gaming in general, history. The discussion will be held in English, but it is obviously possible to ask questions also in Polish. They will be translated. The same applies to any other topics if there are any after our initial conversation. So firstly, my initial question will be related to the 1920 project, the game by Jarosław Lis, released nearly 30 years ago initially, a huge success, a game which now you will be revisiting. So how this game will once again reappear? What was the idea? Who got this idea?
Oh, it's a really funny story. I don't know exactly. You need to ask Jarek, but you know that the event was really surprising for me. During pandemic, there was a great debate about Polish presidential elections. It should be a delay or not, and so on. And I have a public debate online debate organized by Klub Jagielloński, one of the think tank, and there was after discussion about the problem of elections, there was the questions from audience by on chat, and the organizer at the end said that there is one question which is not related to problem of Polish elections, but it was asked as many times, so I should ask it. Where will be the re-edition of Polish Soviet war game? So, and 2 days later, Jarek sent me email with this question. So I'm not sure if he has participated in this event online, but maybe this is only a general idea in the field around the Poland. So find a way.
You need the answer. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Actually, I was contacted by someone who pointed me to that interview and said there is a question coming from the public about the re-edition, and I decided to get in touch. So here we go.
Oh, thanks. So it's now it's clear for me what's happened. So maybe there's the question: what could change except the project, the illustration, the graphic? Because you know that this old game What to say? It's not very impressive from point of view of editorial quality and so on. It was surprisingly. I've sent my homemade graphics project for my own purposes, and editor just take it and send to the to print factory, and the result is not very impressive. So I appreciate that there's new good new idea, and for me there's no big changes in the engine, but there is one there's some changes in general options, because 20 years ago, so it means 10 years after, almost 10 years after the board game, I was engaged in the project with the Operational Art of War, the computer games with possibility to create scenarios, and I try to change this game to the scenarios of this game, and at this time I've create new idea about the options of reinforcement. That the most important part of any war game, when the reinforcement are important part of the order of battle, is the question that now after we know history, so we know where the reinforcement will arrive. So this is not realistic during this game. So, for example, if the Soviet forces marched toward Warsaw, they were not sure how many new divisions will organize based on the national rally against all horrible Asian invasion against our civilization. But now, if you have a game, you know everything, and as a Soviet commander, okay, I expect 3 divisions. So this is for sure not 5, for sure not 1. So this is completely unrealistic. But at the 30 years ago, I only think that what should be done in such case, it's a random event. But the random event, it's a random balance of the game. So if you roll a die and say the number of divisions you can organize during rally, it's just another game which is decisive for the battle. The main idea is to create a engine with the trade-off that you can have more area or less area, or more later, or maybe in this direction, and maybe from this direction. So this is, I think, the real change in this project, to find a new way to change the order of battle, to make some new scenarios, but still with balance.
Okay.
That's
I will return to the topic related to changes in the game, but before that I would like to ask a question to Mark concerning how what are your thoughts after this initial play today? Because you played the game earlier with Jarek. Jarek earlier said that this is a game which is almost 30 years old, but while playing it, did you really have the impression that this is such an oldie? Or?
No, there's some brilliant ideas in this game. I was telling Yarrow on our way here this morning that there was really good ideas, and like the concept of the reaction move and replacements that come in when you don't attack, and the light casualties in combat. Yeah, you've got a great game there. Okay? Lots of good ideas. I was impressed.
Mm-hmm. So while designing games, do you sometimes take a look at your earlier designs? Because you also had some games which were released after some years. Yeah, Successors is a good example with 5 or 6 editions. So when revisiting a game, What are your initial?
My initial.
Yes. What is your initial approach concerning what to maintain in the project and what to maybe change in it?
I back 30 years ago, I think in the 80s, we put up with a lot of fiddly, complicated rules, and nowadays I think we have less patience for these kind of fiddly rules. Extra count markers to keep track of strength, every strength point, markers for morale, markers for exhaustion, and I don't think players have less tolerance for that kind of fiddly stuff. They want a game that can play faster with less work involved. So if I'm going to revitalize an old design, I'll just try to find ways to simplify it. Take 10 rules and try to condense it down to 5. Just find the cleanest way to solve the problem with the fewest amount of rules. So I try to simplify, basically, an old game.
I suppose the same applies also to 1920. You already said in one of your previous interviews that you do not like to script anything inside a game. You enable the player to commit mistakes which historically weren't made or were made by others, but you give them the liberty of committing those mistakes during the game. So is this your approach, your philosophy towards designing new games and also revisiting 1920?
Yes, because my first experience, my first war game, modern game, was the White Eagle Red Star. It was during communist time, so for us it was the students at this time. It was very attractive to play the game against the Soviets. It was in 80s, so I spent many hours fighting this way. But I like this game, but I found that there is some completely artificial phenomenon, a gamey effect we call it now it if I pronounce it correctly, that you start to play using rules, not to without the intuition. So one example from the Soviet Polish War from this game. At the beginning, there is no action in the Belarus front, and there was an operational pause in the June. So in those games, it was the picture was this way. It was simulated this way, that Soviet Western Front cannot attack at the beginning at all. After free turn you can attack, and after next free turn you need to stop for next turn. So it was completely unrealistic, because if Polish player know that there is no attack on Belarus during first turn, that the first decision is to take all troops from Belarus and send it to Ukraine to create advantage. And next, this is time when we expect the Soviet offensive, so we take all forces from Ukraine to send to Belarus. So they cannot think this way, because there was not such information. So I prefer that there's a price. You have an obstacle. It's not so simple for Soviet to attack at once. There's a price, but it's still possible that they can do it with the. So if the Polish player play too risky, he can trigger a surprising attack by Soviet on the Western front, and so on. So maybe it's not simplification. Of course, I've tried to simplify something, but it's
hard for designers.
yes, it's it's hard to change could change balance or something like this. But for example, there's a small simplification. Why? For example, what I don't like in this my first game, in many hex and counter games, it's that there's a lot of units with different numbers, 6 points, strength points, 9, 10, and part of the game is micromanagement, how to collect the good relations of force and combine not to lose a single combat strength and so on. So if you look at my games, there's in those games the strongest unit have 4. And in the Emperor's Last War, the strongest units have 3 points. Just to stop that we have, maybe it's not a chess, but a simplification, that the unit should be uniform. So, for example, the simplification is in this game is that you can go to the anonymous unit. I don't like anonymous unit, but I know that it's a problem to put 1st Legion division in this direction and 15 division in this direction. If these units are different, you cannot mix them because it changed the scenario. But if all units are the same, you can, if you are interested in history, you can find the unit and put in the correct place. But if not, you can just mix them. Of course, there's some units which are ornament, which are that this is not uniformization. So there's still some units, but not as many as in the old version.
Mm-hmm. And Mark, what is your point of view concerning this specific topic related to how to create a game which will be at the same time historically accurate, but at the same time it will be challenging. It will be giving a lot of fun to the players. It's not an easy task at all.
No, are you talking about specifically the 1920 Polish War,
in general,
or to games?
Your approach towards designing games when you try to tackle a problem as a specific topic,
right.
How do you approach it?
That's a good question. I find a lot when I'm playtesting, if I forget a rule, I'll usually eliminate it from my rule booklet.
Okay.
And just so, and I'll find rules that my playtesters will forget or they won't understand. That I'll know that I need to simplify this system. It's a lot of trial and error, I think. Plus, I design a game that I want to play, and I don't want to fiddle too much. I think most players just want to sit down, push units around, roll some dice, have fun, but they want to learn. That's one of the main things I do in my games. I want to teach people about the topography, the special unique units, why armies or corps moved in certain directions. I try to teach and have something that players can enjoy.
So that's the educational aspect of the games that you both create. But in order to teach, first you have to learn. So how this process of research looks? Does it really take a lot of time to browse through all the documents?
Oh, yeah. Lots of time, yeah.
So what was the most challenging project that you had when it comes to the sources, the documents?
Well, before the Russian archives came online, I think in 2010 or 12, we had to go through all old books, and the order of battle of the Russian army was really hard to find. So there was a lot of guesswork. I just tried to read as many books as I could, take notes, maybe steal some stuff from other people's games, see what they had, try to verify it. It just takes time.
Mm-hmm. When revisiting 1920, one of the things which you can take, or you did take into consideration, is the fact that now, today, you have access to a lot of different information that you hadn't accessed at the time when the game was initially released. Now, does it really change something in your approach towards the game? Did it change something in terms of how the new edition will look compared to the old one?
The only thing is more information about the Russian counter-revolutionary forces, which is now well described in Polish language. Because when I prepared the game, I of course spent a lot of time in libraries, and especially in the Central Military Library. And there was one very good book about it. Now I have a re-edition of this book in my home, but at the beginning I was really surprised. It is the official Soviet history of this war, written in 20s by comrades of Tuchaczewski. All was shot with Tuchaczewski. All authors was shot later During the Stalin purges. Yes, but they write a very good detailed book with detailed order of battle, description. There was no ideology, just description of the battles with maps, and of course there's a lot of good books, Polish books, old before the Second World War, which was available in the central military library without any limits. During communist time, so there's a lot of detailed description of the single battles and so on. So, by the way, the much difficult was to find at this time information about the First World War and the digitalization of old books. Change much more in my information base for the First World War than for the Polish-Soviet War, because surprisingly this war was very well described in 20s and 30s in Poland and in Soviet Union, and all was available 30 years ago. So with one exception, this is this counter-revolutionary forces, because this is the only area which was not described at all in the Soviet book, and there was a limited information about the problem in Polish books and articles during 20s, but in the 90s in Poland there's a lot of books about all these eastern allies of the Polish army, about Ukrainian army, about the Russian volunteers units, and so on. So I found that my imagination about it was a little far from reality, but it's all the margin.
A question, so now related, Mark, to your current projects. While playing today 1920 and looking at it also from a perspective of the fact that this game is an old game which will be revisited, did it happen to you also to work on projects based on what you already had in your previous games? Now, what is part of your framework, if I might say, are you using when approaching a new project? Is it something which you are using, or are you always trying to approach a new project with an open mind without taking into consideration your previous games?
No, I do try to bring over as much as possible from my old designs, because I know people have learned that. And it drives them crazy when I'll change a little rule because they expect it one way. And so I try to keep it as much as possible, but I'm always tempted to tweak it a little bit different each time. So
to make it a little bit different,
to improve it, or try to make it recreate the topic better. So it's hard. But I see my game slowly improving. So I look back at my old games as faulty or not very good. So I appreciate my customers put up with me back then.
So it's always a question also of listening to people's feedback and what they think, what were their impressions while playing the game, and pointing out some things which might work better or which maybe could be done in a different way.
Yeah, I love feedback from customers because I always find out what people like and what they don't like. And I remember some feedback I got real early on Decision in France, which I think was back in the 90s. The guy said, I really like your games, but they're fiddly. I go, because I had 2 or 3 units for one single unit as it got reduced. And so that was a good feedback I got. And ever since then, I just had one unit representing a division or a certain unit. So, no, feedback's great. It helps improve the game.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to feedback and to ideas by players, by people who are in the end playing your games, I know that when the game got released and then during all those years when it was played by some avid wargamers, discussed on some forums, there were some ideas how to improve it or how to change some things. For instance, hidden movement. That was a thing which was absent in the first edition. It will be present in the second one, in the new one. This is one of the changes which will be part of the new edition.
Yes, but this is a difficult subject. Now, from history, this is the problem, maybe the biggest change in our view of the Polish-Soviet war, that we now know that Polish intelligence know almost everything at this time, because we've found archive of the Polish intelligence, and we know that they could decipher Soviet radio messages. So usually they know before Soviet attack what is direction, what is goal, what are troops, and so on. This is unimaginable now. Of course, for many reasons, it was not effective in manage to what to do with this situation. But from gaming point of view, now we cannot make a game when there's a hidden movement of one side. And all is clear for the other player. It's not a fun. And of course, with experience of Emperor's Last War, the 1914 game, know that that game became much more complicated as a decision process if you have a hidden information. So we will try. It will be an option with us with a little limited scale. It not will be as important as in the 1914 in Emperor's Last War, but there will be a trick. So of course I very like the hidden information. But the first there's a question about historical accuracy that in this case it's not so obvious as usual, and the second is there's a problem of complication of the game.
Yes, slows down the game, makes it complicated when you got a lot of hidden movement or fog of war. Yeah.
So it's again a question of finding the golden mean between accuracy and playability and maintaining the game at a level which will enable to have fun while playing the game.
Yep.
But for sure, there's a problem of how to surprise your enemy. So, for example, one of the case in both games is hidden concentration of the troops, when you can send troops by rail without putting them on the map, but with description of on the piece of paper where the units are going, and next you can show, these units are here, they can go for attack, and this is a real surprising effect. And my experience is that it creates a real surprising offensives such thing, and without real complication of the game. So this is the easiest way without all this. I must remember where is my own unit. Because if you, of course, in the case of the blocks, when you see everything and your enemy cannot, this is the simplest way of the hidden movement, and
Right.
maybe, but it makes sense with the limited number of units. With the lot of units, it's not so simple. But of course, it's a good idea, and we'll try to implement it.
Mm-hmm. So how about playtesting? Because obviously it's something which also takes a lot of time. It's also a process which enables to find some flaws in the design. What was the game which took you the longest time to
Playtest?
playtest and to come to a point when you told yourself, that's it, it's the final one?
Probably the last one, North Africa 41, because it's a long game. I think it's got 40 something turns to it or something. So I had to play that 40 turn game for 4 or 5 times, which was a lot for me.
So that was quite a
Yeah.
challenge.
Well, the smaller scenarios I played a lot, but the campaign game, that takes a while. Yeah. So that particular game was the longest. Yeah.
Okay, and during playtesting of these or of any of your other designs, did you come to a point when during one of the playtests someone came up with an idea which made you change something because it was such a big flaw found in the process that you decided to revisit some of the rules?
Yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah, and one little change can ripple through a design,
Like a domino.
a domino effect. Yeah, and kind of wipe out a year's worth of playtesting when you could change a rule. Yeah, that happens.
How the playtest team reacts to such situations? They are happy that they found it, or
they're
just they say, oh no, we will have to replay the game once more 40 times.
no, they're okay with it. Yeah, they'll keep playing. Yeah. Yeah, I'm fortunate to have some good playtesters, patient ones. Yeah.
That's an important virtue.
Yeah.
How about 1920? So, how many playtests already?
Oh, now it's the question to the Sergeant because
He was anticipating this question, so he left.
So now I unfortunately I have no time for playtesting myself. But many years ago I spent many hours on this game, and as well as my friends. And I have one main sparring partner, Critical, with the strong pressure for simplification and questioning lot of solutions. So it was the one good Critical playtester who thinks no, it's too complicated. It's stupid. Oh, it shouldn't work this way. This is my a good experience. Of course, it's difficult. We spend them. Sometimes we meet for the playing and spend 2 hours discussing if this should work this way on another. But I think that it was the best, the well used time in such cases.
I think the more we play our games, after 9 to 12 months, we can sense how a certain rule change will affect the game, and we don't have to play test everything all over again. We can see, this is going to change this, which will change it. So once we've got 9 to 12 months under our belt, we can sense how a change will affect the game better than we would 1 or 2 months into the process. So
9 to 12 months from a wargamer perspective is not a lot of time. We are used to waiting for war games for years.
Yeah.
So, which of your projects was the longest one? Which game took the
Probably
longest time?
my very first game, and took about 8 years of design. I started it when I was a teenager, and I didn't finish it until I was actually more than 8, till I was 31 years old or 32 years old. Yeah, so that was The Legend Begins. So
For quite a long time.
quite a long time, and it was interesting. 32 years later, I did North Africa 41. It's a redo of The Legend Begins.
Mm-hmm.
So.
So, when talking of such projects, what are your current projects and your future plans? Do you have any current games which you're working on?
Jarek, you want to go first?
I have one project which is not finished. This is Ostfront, the third great campaign. Because what for me was most interesting in selection of the game, this is the similar level of activity of both sides. Both sides could need to be able to crush enemy, to feel that I'm victor, not that I like in some games that I was able to delay his offensive. No, this is not interesting for me. I need for both sides to create the encirclement, destroy half of the army. Oh, this is interesting. So I found the third campaign in the eastern part of the Europe, which is the winter campaign of Second World War, 1942-43. It's beginning is the Soviet counteroffensive in Stalingrad, and the end is the Battle of Kharkiv, and it's still waiting after 25 years, so maybe it's a long for the and it was only used to create a scenario for the operational of war with name Frozen Steppes, but I found that Frozen Steppes, it sounds good in English, but it's you cannot translate into Polish in a good way. So maybe Ostfront, it's a new idea. And I have my first as game created as teenager was still in progress. So of course it's Frozen. This is about the operational battle of the First World War. It's Battle of Łódź and Komarów, and it was used to create the scenarios for the operational of War II. All this research and ideas and so on. It's on the level of brigade and division, and maybe one day was the series of forgotten battles. There's a lot of very interesting battles in the same result, offensive and counter-offensive. So this is my favorite setting of the game. So Battle of Łódź and Komarów was such cases. So maybe one day.
In 25 years.
Yes, next 25 years you can wait and.
Okay.
Hopefully
Okay.
So my
How
next
about you?
project is finishing up the Italian campaign series from Salerno. So it'll be Casino in Anzio. And I've got about a month left on France 40. Get that off to the printer.
Okay. Will you be revisiting the Eastern Front?
My Order of Battle guy, Fred Thomas, wants to do an East Front game again. So maybe 1944 East Front, or he also is interested in 1941, the Drive on Moscow, 41. So we'll probably go back to the East Front at some time. But that could be 3 years from now.
I hope that after this year's meeting in Poland, you will also consider 1920 as an interesting topic.
Well, there's already a good game on 1920. So, now, I would consider 1939 Poland. I have considered that, yeah. but I haven't researched it much, so
Who knows?
who knows? Yeah,
It's not very symmetric battle,
no.
unfortunately.
But still a very, very interesting topic. That's true. All right. Thank you very much for answering my questions, but that's not the end of our meeting, because now I'd like to address the audience and to ask if are there any questions from the audience. I jeśli są jakieś pytania po polsku, to oczywiście przetłumaczymy. Więc zapraszam do zadawania pytań.
I have a question. What are the origins of idea of creating the successors?
That was a game that showed up. I was working at Avalon Hill in the 1990s, and that was a game that Richard Berg submitted to Avalon Hill. And he probably read a good book on successors, submitted it to the company, and I was the one that received it at Avalon Hill, and that was my job to develop it. So, the idea came from Richard Berg.
So you were rising a child
Yeah.
into the maturity.
Okay, so question to the Jarosław, please. As you said, as I understood, the main changes in the game comparing to the previous edition are caused by the new researchers. You have found new sources, historical, or are there any gamey changes?
Yes, but it's a small part of this game. For me, the political options, which was I considered many years ago, are important part. That, for example, there's a possibility to change balance between northern and southern Soviet front. That means western and southwestern. It's exactly the historical point of view. That there are two options and unit for it. One is the Third Horse Army. That you can send some cavalry unit from Ukraine for Tukhachevsky. So to develop the third cavalry corps into cavalry army of 4 division, and the next option is based on my lecture about history. That it's a letter of Comrade Stalin. That Stalin, as a political officer of the Southern Front, sent a letter to Kamieniev, to chief of the Soviet army, to send 2 divisions who historically go to the Belarus, sent to Ukraine to strengthen Southern Front. So at the beginning, the Soviet player could select or to leave everything like in history, or to send troops from north to the south, or from south to the north. So you can play in campaign game, of course. Only you can play it a little different game, and the Polish player cannot expect as detailed the order of battle of and sources on. So because it's not clear at the beginning, it's clear when this reinforcement arrived. So it could be a little surprise for the Polish player. And
I understand this choice is based on the idea not to give the opponent exact data about reinforcements, yeah? Or
yes.
Because it's different than historical, yeah?
Yes, but it's based on the possibilities, real historical possibilities.
Yeah.
So though it was the Stalin who asked general commander to send such troops. So it's not something completely from the moon, like we said in the Polish, that we cannot. For example, sometimes such cases, of course, in the games are created. I remember that in the original White Eagle Red Star game, there was an option with the Freikorps when the all East Prussia is given to the Polish state. So the Soviet player received Freikorps German voluntary units fighting against Poles in East Prussia against the Polish troops. So it was the completely nothing common with history. So I prefer if I found some data, some historical events which make some options more probably. I try to use it.
In Polish historiography, there is a theory or myth that Stalin was the main fault of the disaster of the Western Soviet front. How far do you agree with it?
Oh, of course, the lack of coordination between the Southwest front and Western front is obvious. But like this general rule was described that people that the designer shouldn't force the historical mistakes for player, but player can make really stupid movements in the game too, without any support of the designer. So of course I've seen that the one player, not two players playing the game, have a problem with coordination between north and southern part of the front line. So for sure you could have a contradictory feelings. You can feel that it's possible to reach at one time Lvov and Warsaw. But unfortunately, you was not able to reach any one of this city. So this is exactly the problem. We don't need Stalin himself to make stupid decision. I'm afraid.
Yeah, question from Mark really. So you're obviously famous for the ZOC bonds and the ZOCs. So and then you played the game today, which doesn't have ZOCs. It has this kind of concept of line of friction, which is what 1920's got, which is a bit different. Do you think that there's scope for the whole concept of how ZOCs and hex encounter games work to further develop and progress? Because there's just this kind of arbitrary concept of what a ZOC is around a hex, but what does that actually mean, and is that actually realistic, or could you progress it a bit? You choose, because historically, a force isn't always capable of exerting the ZOC everywhere.
Right.
So, could you move? Is there a way of moving the whole concept of hex encounter forward by the next breakthrough in ZOCs after ZOC bombs?
I really like what Yark did with his friction and how you could move through. The one thing I think it's missing is I think it does take time to disengage. So I think the ZOC system is nice, where if an army wants to get out of the front line, move over, come, it should pay for something to move and go over. But I think maybe part of your system already shows that. But I think the Yarok system and the basic ZOC bond or ZOC system is very similar in how they work.
Yeah.
It's all working about the same. There's maybe different names to it and different rules of how it's working, but it's basically the same thing.
So, because how about a situation where you don't? So ZOCs always are everywhere, but does that make sense actually? Should you have a backward base? If your force is all facing forward, why have you got a ZOC around the back?
That's simple. Well, you're right. A good question if you're doing a Napoleonic game or a tactical level game. But if you're doing a operational or strategic, I think Zox all around is fine.
Maybe more of a challenge, not a question. Do you think it is possible to make a good, mechanically good and historically setting a game which lasts no more than 30 minutes?
Impossible. Yeah.
You just ruined my dreams.
40 hours, 40 hours. It's possible, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Just a limited topic. I mean, a small map, just of 10 units per side. Yeah, that's very possible to do something like that. But will customers pay much money for it? Will a game, will the publisher, make any money doing something like that? That would be a challenge.
I think every man would pay a lot of money just to make it possible to play with his wife
Or his kids, yeah. It'd be a nice introduction for kids and wives and for newcomers to the hobby. That's a good point. Well, there was a magazine what was the name of that magazine that included these little postcard games?
Against the odds.
Against the odds. So that was kind of like,
There is a campaign on Kickstarter, I think, by David Thompson, who does the postcard games, solitaire games. There's like 5 games in package. Each played about 10 minutes. You get Market Garden, 10 minutes, 10 die rolls, and you have to sort it out. Lunch break game, a real lunch break game. Like you can play at school at lunch, 10 minutes.
so there are games like that, but they're just probably hard to find now, or
I think they'll be coming.
they'll be coming.
Well, it's a problem of value of victory. That if you have a very short game, value of the victory is lower. And if you spend 20 hours or 20 days, you feel that you lost something. You think if you lost battle.
Good point. Also, the shorter the game, the more likely luck will determine the winner. So that's another disadvantage to easy short games. They're more luck dependent, I think, in general.
So maybe it's not a luck. It's a soccer paper and
Rock, paper, scissors.
yes. So it could be of course, we can call it a battle and
Right.
play this way. So this is a old Eastern Front during 10 seconds. So when you try to play, but I think that this is a real problem of the value of the victory and defeat in such case. But for sure, the 30 minutes it's maybe enough to feel that you are a loser and you lost this this 30 minutes and it was painful. I think that 20 minutes or 10 minutes it's not enough. You can let's try a game. It's not a problem, but 40 minutes it's good time for maybe.
I have a question. When you're designing a game, a war game that corresponds to a specific historic event, now we have, let's say, almost perfect knowledge. We know how we do it in reality. But for a game to be fun, obviously, that it cannot be deterministic. So you need to tweak the history. Do you think about this like that? And what are the boundaries that you can go with tweaking history to make the game actually fun?
Well, I try never to introduce things against history, but I can definitely stretch it or justify it. Say, well, this unit or this Air Force was had a big impact when maybe it had just a medium amount of impact. So there's a lot of leeway in there. So, but no, I would never add a unit like that was there or our Godzilla counter or something like that, or let a unit arrive that days early. I might put that in my game, but I never use it when I'm playing a game. Like, this unit fought in this campaign, but it could have been here. So it's something that you try not to do.
I prefer think as a decision situation, not exactly that. The problem was that the discussion many times ago about the game of my friend, about the Battle of Britain and possible assault, possible landing of Germans. And for example, the Britons think that it is possible to land in Scotland. Now we know that it's completely impossible, that there is no real chance that somebody with any resources, not with just German resources in 1940, was able to send assault operations landing in Scotland. But they was not sure that it's impossible. So what we should do if, let's say that the Germans really landing in the Essex, so what to do with these troops from Scotland? Send them already to Essex, or what should be a timetable of units defending Scotland, sending to southern England during the save? This is a real problem for designers. So maybe if there's a trick, there's a trick to recreate the dilemma. Not to recreate the historical event, but historical event we don't know anything about what could happen in the case with Germans crossing Channel and what to do with Scottish troops. But we need to find, it could be are we able to create an interesting dilemma based on this situation or not?
Another element to your question is, my game's not balanced, it's not working. I'll try to think I'm missing something. Maybe, and I'll go back and read and see, maybe there was a river they couldn't cross. Maybe this unit was stronger. So if it's not working, that's the first thing I consider. Hey, I'm not seeing something. There's a reason why they won here or lost there, and I'm not seeing it yet.
But still, it's up to the designer.
It's up to me.
To focus on this, because in reality, well, one side won. So obviously, if you want, this history is not balanced.
Yeah, and wargamers are all biased, so we may be emphasizing something that should not be emphasized, or did the wrong thing. So yeah.
You do introduce random events too.
Yeah.
There's a question: what is draw line? In the case, and this is a point when you can think. Of course, in history, somebody is winner, but where is the draw? And so, in this case, we can think what should be a victory of the opposite side, unhistorical, and what could happen in such case.
Both authors, I have questions. What are your favorite operation or variant of the operations which was cancelled or changed at the last moment, historical?
Sea lion.
For example, I can only say about my first game about Battle of Komarów. It was at the beginning, you know, that there was a Austro-Hungarian operation in central Poland, and it was really close to repeat the Tannenberg battle, to encircle 2 Russian corps. And in the critical moment, as I've read, to one of the lower level soldiers came to the headquarters of Austrian corps with the calling that there are Cossacks on our rear area, and they stopped the final attack to create dance and serpent, and the information was false. But the Russians was able to retreat from the packet. So this is because what was my first contact with the war games. So I think my own games. So I think that this is a small case when one false report changed the history.
Level.
Yes, I think that if during Battle for Galicia, Austrian-Hungarian army could win the battle like Tannenberg with destroying 2 Russian corps, it could change the course of the First World War.
Would you repeat the question?
My question was about which your operations
In World War
changed-
II,
Not only
in any war, what
in any war, which
operation
is your
that was
favorite?
canceled
Or
at the
changed.
last minute or changed that interests me the most, or that
Yes, which you would make for your own.
to
like
make a game out of?
You've done it, sickle cut.
Yeah, that's
for yourself.
for myself. Yeah, Sea Lion would be interesting. Invasion of Malta might be interesting. That would be, that's something I haven't really thought about because I like historical games. So I'm not, but
Invasion of Malta is really interesting
Yeah,
case.
Yes, because it would change outcome. Of
Yeah.
War of Africa, North Africa.
How about Operation Felix that was taken Gibraltar?
yeah, that'd be interesting.
Operation Unthinkable.
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah, no, I haven't given it much thought. That
Thank you.
Is there a mechanism for your games that you had to put aside for the sake of simplicity that you would like to revisit?
a mechanism I've set aside that I may want to revisit. Let's see, maybe no, because each game I design, I try to make it just a little bit easier to play. So yeah, no, I'm always trying to take things out of games rather than add things back in.
Okay, one more question about simplification of games. Is it rather the demand of the market, or the result of your deeper analysis that it should follow that path? Development of games should follow that path.
Is the market determining whether the game should get?
demand of determined by the market rather, or the affect your thoughts itself, yeah, apart from the market.
Why do you want to simplify your games? Why is I think you're asking, why do you want to simplify your games?
Why do I want to simplify my games?
Is it market driven?
I think people have less time to play their games now. Their kitchen table is not as big enough to hold a big game board. People have busy lives, so they want a game to start and finish in one day. So I try to do that. But back in the 1970s, it was mostly college students with unlimited amounts of time playing these war games, and I think that's how the complexity started. And so I'm just, yeah, I designed a game, something that I want to play. And so as I get older, I have, I guess, less patience with things, so.
And in the USA, there was such time that the game became more and more complicated because of the people who played.
People wanted more, bigger and more.
Yeah.
They loved
There was
war
a lot
games
of
so much.
students, yeah.
Yeah, they said, hey, if a game this size is good, a game this size has got to be twice as fun. So.
But apart from physical
Size.
dimensions, I mean rather rules. The
Rules,
level
yeah.
of complication of rules was
Well,
also growing because of that.
I find first-time designers like to put everything in their game, and everything's important. And I think as you more and more games you design, I think you start to learn that no, not everything's important. Not everything on a topographic map has to be shown on the map. Not every combat unit down to the company size needs to be in your order of battle. So yeah, just something. Sometimes less is more.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Are there any more questions?
Ja może miałem pytanie, jeśli mogę po polsku być
Mhm.
łatwiej. Czy planowana byłaby reedycja gry Demarka Ukraine 43 w tym duchu jak France 40, czyli jakby taka odświeżona? I czy w kręgu jego zainteresowań są nowoczesne konflikty, takie jak na przykład, które się dzieje na Ukrainie, które jakby przypomina bardziej konflikt konwencjonalny, porównywalny w jakimś sensie z II wojną?
So the question is related to Ukraine 43. Are you planning to revisit this game in the same spirit as France? And are you interested in some of the modern conflicts? Are you planning to visit some of them? Or maybe do you want to design a game devoted to such a conflict?
Well, regarding Ukraine 43, I've already revisited. There was a 1990 version of it, I think, right, or 2000. So if Ukraine 43 is reprinted, I don't think I would change anything except for fix the typos. Far as a modern game, I've got so many projects on my to-do list that I probably won't visit modern era war games.
Any more questions? Czy są jeszcze jakieś pytania?
How you remember your cooperation with Richard Berg?
Oh, I loved Richard Berg. He has a great sense of humor. We got along really good. And when he dropped off successors at Avalon Hill and I recommended some changes, he said, Mark, you do whatever you want. I'm getting paid one way or another. And you're not getting paid for it. So no, it was good. Richard and I had a great relationship. He was a wonderful person. And he gave me freedom to do whatever I wanted with his game.
Okay.
And
It's a big trust.
it was a big trust, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No more questions?
No. Think
No
we're
more
good?
questions.
Now a question.
So thank you very much for attending today, for having this conversation. I'd like also to thank Phalanx for bringing up the idea of organizing this panel discussion today. A big thank you to Ryszard Kita, who organized this on behalf of the Fields of Glory Convention. And of course, a big thank you to all the persons attending here, also for your activity, for all your questions. I'm hoping that the continuation of the convention will bring you a lot of joy. Thank you very much, and have a great end of the Fields of Glory.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.